Hello everyone, I'm Dawn. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for visiting with me today. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel, The Cutting Board. We do all kinds of things here, including vlogs, Disney content, true crime, DIY, SFX makeup, food and cooking content, all kinds of stuff, whatever I feel like doing. Now, if you aren't interested in what I have to say, I just really don't know why you're here. So if that is the case, you can leave now. We all have varying opinions and feelings, and I am fine with everyone sharing those safely in the comments section. Rudeness and disrespect will not be tolerated. You can express opposing opinions respectfully. So please feel free to leave your comments. And remember, English isn't everyone's first language. Keep that in mind when you feel moved to correct someone. Thank you. I really didn't think I was going to be making another Gypsy Rose video so soon, but here I am. Gypsy Rose appeared on Good Day LA, and I have some things to say about it.
The story, but our next guest has one that is both horrifying and heartbreaking.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard went to prison after pleading guilty to second-degree murder, the murder of her mother.
The media is so screwed up. Her story is horrifying and heartbreaking, but not for the reason these reporters are trying to sell it as. And honestly, these media outlets should be ashamed of themselves for not doing proper research before letting this narcissistic con woman on their show to talk about things she cares nothing about. Imagine how horrifying it was to be awoken by someone stabbing you repeatedly. Gypsy had her mother killed, not because of medical mistreatment, but because she wanted away. I've said it a million times, and I'm going to say it again. She never once mentioned in her hours-long interrogation that her mom was forcing her to live in a wheelchair, that her mom was making her sick, which is what people with Munchausen by proxy do. They make the victim sick. Garnett Spears' mother poisoned him with salt purposefully to make him sick. Tiffany Alberts injected her child's IV with feces while he was undergoing cancer treatment. Jessica Jones intentionally poisoned her 4-year-old with Benadryl and other drugs to fake a seizure disorder. The National Library of Medicine published a study where an infant suffered from factitious hypoglycemia caused when the infant's type 2 diabetic mother injected him with her own insulin. The infant was separated from the mother and after 18 hours of fasting had no hypoglycemia. My point is, these mothers tried to make their children sick. Dee Dee didn't poison Gypsy. She didn't make her sick. Now Gypsy is rolling with what all these people believe happened and is totally ignoring the facts of her very real chromosomal 1q21.1 microdeletion, which explains the need for the medical procedure she has had. Dee Dee wasn't making Gypsy sick. Gypsy had a condition. So yes, this story is horrifying and heartbreaking. What happened to Dee Dee is horrifying, and in that regard, I really don't have a lot of sympathy for Nicholas, though I do believe how Gypsy mistreated him and manipulated him is also horrific. And it's heartbreaking that this girl's promises of love and a life together made him do what he did. He knew right from wrong. He absolutely has a lot of responsibility here, but so does Gypsy. She has a lot more than an 8-year prison sentence worth of responsibility. These two women conducting this interview have it twisted, and it's sad that they aren't better informed. Or maybe they are and just don't care, because Nicholas Godejohn doesn't have a book to promote on their, pretty shiny show.
And throughout her childhood and beyond, Gypsy's mother would tell people her daughter suffered from a string of illnesses and disorders, going so far as to do things that included making her use a wheelchair, a feeding tube, get multiple unnecessary surgeries, and take medication she didn't need.
Years of physical, mental, and medical abuse led to Gypsy convincing a man she met online to kill her mother. She served 7 years of her 10-year sentence. She was released last December. Gypsy tells her story. She adds details that have never been heard before in her new memoir, My Time to Stand.
She adds details that have never been heard before because she needed to think of more BS to feed everybody. She can write as many books as she wants, but the bottom line is she masterminded the cold-blooded, brutal unaliving of her mother. And the original reason given was so she and her boyfriend could be together. It wasn't because her mother was making her sick. It was so she could make an escape. I don't believe she even wanted to be with Nicholas. She was just using him. He was convenient. Her hope was the whole thing would be pinned on him, and basically it was. So she could not only be rid of her mom, but also be rid of Nicholas after she was done with him. The con was going to have to come to an end, and that was going to be a problem for Gypsy.
The story has been well documented, and a lot of people have been following your journey and everything that happened. But what do you want people to know and take away from this memoir?
I really just want them to read this memoir and realize that it doesn't matter what you have been through in your life. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that good things still could happen for you regardless of the horrors that you may have experienced in your life, because I think everyone relates to trauma in some form or fashion.
She's saying all the buzzwords her PR team told her to say. I'm sure they had a list of questions before the softball interview, and Gypsy practiced her answers. It's very well rehearsed. She says a whole lot, but doesn't really say anything at the same time.
Well, for about 23 years of your life or so, it was basically, you could describe it as a nightmare, right?
Correct.
How were you able to move on or move forward? Do you think about the past? Do you think about your mother?
I mean, of course. I'm in extensive therapy, and I work through my past by going through that therapy. And it's going to be a long journey. It's nothing that I will be able to get over in one day. So it's going to be a lifelong healing process for me.
The body language is very jerky. Jerky movements can indicate lack of confidence in one's responses. And it still just seems very rehearsed.
You say you want to be an influence for change. Can you talk about that? What do you mean by that? And did that experience in prison highlight the fact that you want to be an influence for change?
Absolutely. I feel like there is a lot of positive change that could happen if given the ability. And so I think that there is a lot of things in our justice system that needs to be addressed. So I am an advocate for prison reform.
One thing in our justice system that needs to be addressed is how the mastermind of a brutal killing gets to walk free after a baby prison sentence, while the mentally ill man she manipulated and coerced into doing the deed rots in prison for the rest of his days. And there does need to be reform. There needs to be more help for autistic and intellectually challenged inmates, like Gypsy Rose's ex-boyfriend. I wonder if she's considering him in her little project. She doesn't even have any clear vision of what reform should look like. Again, just saying, the rehearsed words, the lemons want to hear.
An advocate for prison reform, but also for abuse victims. I feel like I was in a situation where I didn't know that there were resources to help children and, victims of abuse in my situation. And so I think that needs to be advocated more, those resources, and more knowledge and education about that.
She doesn't even know what she's saying. How are you going to advocate, Gypsy? You can't even make a rehearsed response sound sincere.
Talk about that, because you say in and out of prison, your platform you're using right now to really spread the message that there needs to be change and there is hope, as you were mentioning.
What platform is she spreading that message on? Is it between getting her followers to buy her baby gifts and showing her outfit of the day?
But talk about your time in prison and the learning aspect you went through in terms of finding what resources were available and learning a lot for yourself about what lies ahead.
Of course, I mean, there are resources that are within the prison system, but getting those resources are actually quite difficult. And so I think that there needs to be very, very specific things that are laid out, because it is very difficult for incarcerated individuals to get the extensive mental health therapy that they would require. So there needs to be more advocacy on that.
So advocate for it. Do something. But think about, do prisoners that have been manipulated and mistreated really want someone like Gypsy Rose speaking on their behalf? Seriously, think about it. She was evil in her actions against Nicholas and her mother. She had a cakewalk prison sentence. That advocacy she seems to care so much about has to extend to prisoners like Nicholas. Maybe this is her attempt at trying to get people to see her in a different light, in a better light. If she wants to advocate, fine, but saying it isn't enough. She's got to do something.
You know, it's fascinating to me that for so many years, you went along with this fabricated story, right? And I guess I have a hard time understanding how, when you would go visit doctors, because you did extensively, how those doctors were unable to see the truth, that you actually could walk, that you didn't need a feeding tube, that you didn't need these drugs you were given. I mean, it's just baffling to me. How was someone out there not saying, wait a minute, she doesn't need any of this stuff, this is all a lie?
I know. The level of deception that my mother had over these doctors was so extensive and so severe that these doctors would ignore test results coming back normal and things like this, things that should have been red flags. And unfortunately, I was one of the individuals of many that fall through the cracks.
So do you find those doctors in any way responsible for carrying on and allowing your mother then in a way to carry on this lie?
You know, I'd kind of chalk that up to human error. I think we all want to believe the good in people. So, you know, I struggle with that. It is something that, yes, I do feel like they should be held accountable in ways. And other ways, I also feel like it was misjudgment on their part.
She has a documented medical issue that made most of or all of her medical intervention necessary, but let's just ignore that. Stop babying Gypsy Rose. Gypsy was complicit in the scams. She benefited greatly from the scams, and when the scams were nearing an end, Gypsy planned and saw to her mother's end. That's all I have to say tonight. Share your comments down below, and please be respectful, and I'll talk to everyone later. Thanks for visiting. Bye.